All right, guys, so let's talk about tires. So that's another big decision to make when you're going to buy a new compact tractor, because there are 3 or 4 different options that you can pick from. And so I thought it would be interesting to talk about that topic a little bit today. So what I've learned is, and if you've been following my YouTube channel for a while, you know that I kind of started out doing, pickup truck and Jeep kind of material, and spend a lot of time talking about tires, because 4-wheel drive trucks and Jeeps, that's one of the first modifications that guys do to those, and tires make a huge difference on performance. And what I have discovered is that with tractors, it's very similar, to be completely honest. A lot of the aspects of tires in the truck world carry over to tractors, believe it or not. And I'm going to try and explain that a little bit here. So the tractor that we had prior to this one, of course, was a New Holland, like you know already. And it had the R3 turf tires on it. And those tires were on that tractor for 21 years. They were so old that they were showing signs of dry rotting and cracking, but they still held air perfectly and they still worked great. And we put those tires through some really heavy use, some things that tractor honestly wasn't designed to do. Some pretty big jobs, driving up on piles of sharp rock that we had excavated out of the ground when we were laying utility lines, moving a lot of heavy material down in the mud, getting logs out of the woods, driving into creek beds to recover fallen trees, and just on and on and on. We did everything with that tractor, and those R3 tires were awesome. We never had any punctures, never had any flats, never had any issues. Because of the tread design of those tires, they roll smooth down the road if you're out on the road transporting the tractor. And they provided great traction as well. And I kind of compared them to an all-terrain tire that you would buy for a pickup truck. The tread pattern was very similar to an AT tire for a truck or a Jeep. And so I think that made them really good at snow. When we would plow snow, they were great in the snow. They did a good job on hard packed surfaces, dirt and what have you. They were good in the gravel because you have more friction, more contact patch on the surface. And so I just felt like that they were a really great tire. When we first got that tractor and I saw that it had the turf tires on it, I was like, oh man. But over time, I came to really love them and appreciate the fact that tractor had the R3s on it. And obviously, when you're using it around the property, around your house, they're a lot easier on your soil, which is kind of the whole purpose of them. But it just so happens that they excel at everything. And the carcass of those R3 tires is a little bit softer, not quite as heavy duty. And so basically what that means is you get better ride quality. And when you're on a tractor bouncing around in a field or something, or going down a gravel lane and you've got a load in your loader and you start bouncing around, believe it or not, ride quality kind of matters. I mean, it does. And so I really love those R3 tires. And when I went to buy this new tractor, I guess I was a rookie. I'd never bought a new tractor before. And I just assumed that it worked kind of like buying a truck. You would walk into the dealership and tell them exactly what you wanted and they'd order it up for you. But it didn't really work out that way, is what I found. Especially nowadays with the supply chain issues and everything, you kind of have to take what you can get. And so all of the tractors that were on the dealer lot and on other lots in this area, they all had these R4 tires on them. And the other thing the dealer told me is that, most of the time they ship out with these, and if the customer really has to have a different type of tire, the dealership will do that part of the labor, on their end. So the tractor will come in like this, and then the dealership will swap out the wheels and tires. And so there's some labor charge involved there too. So the bottom line is, if I really wanted R3 tires on this new tractor, it was going to cost me quite a bit more money to do that. And I couldn't find any tractors in this area that had R3s on it. All of them had the R4 industrial tires like this. So I was like, okay, fine, I'll take these and I'm sure they'll be all right. And so now I've been using these for a year. The first job that we put this tractor to use doing was plowing snow, and I was surprised at how good these tires did. I mean, they did a respectable job in the snow, better than I expected. But here's what I've kind of noticed about these, and again, this kind of goes back to the pickup truck and Jeep analogy. So you've got an aggressive tread here, right? These huge voids on the outside, but on the inside, these R4 tires, see how the bar kind of straightens out? And so you've got this perfect angle here where the center of the tire can be a little smoother on the pavement or on hard packed surfaces. And so the idea here is that this tire should wear better than a traditional R1 ag tire would. You know, because on the ag tire there is no overlap really. On this tire you have these bars that kind of overlap going down the circumferential center of the tire. So anyway, the idea was that this design would wear better, would ride a little bit smoother on the road, but you still have the big chunky blocks on the outside that'll dig in the mud if you get down in some sloppy stuff. So I kind of looked at this tire as, in the Jeep world, what we would call a hybrid tire, you know, which is a mix between an AT and an MT. You know, you got a little bit of all-terrain characteristic and a little bit of mud terrain characteristic. Well, that's kind of how I view this tire. You know, but the problem with this is that you don't have as much contact patch on the ground at any one time. You just got this little bit of surface area here and a little bit of surface area there, and that's all that's touching the ground. So in most situations, what I have found is the traction, honestly, is not as good with this tire. You don't have as much friction with the surface, I guess, is what it boils down to. So the traction's not as good with this tire, you know, compared to an R3 turf tire. And the other thing is these industrial tires, R4 tires, I mean, they're used on all kinds of equipment. You'll see these on skid steers and aerial booms and all kinds of different pieces of equipment. A lot of that stuff is used on construction sites and various environments like that where there's a lot of obstacles, maybe nails and screws and pieces of metal and rocks and who knows what laying around the construction site. And so they build these with a very, very thick, heavy-duty carcass so that they will be able to stand up to, you know, have the puncture resistance that they need. So I run these tires between 10 and 15 PSI. I think they're like maybe 12 or 13 PSI is where they're at right now. And even with that low PSI on a tractor of this size, it's not a real heavy machine, these things are solid as a rock. I mean, they're very hard. They have no give to them at all. Even when I put a 600-pound implement on the back, these things will start bouncing like crazy because they're so stiff. It's almost like the construction of this tire is overkill for a machine this light. I mean, if you were going to use these tires on a really heavy piece of equipment, maybe they would be a lot better, but I'm running some pretty low PSI on them, and the construction of the tire is just overkill. Now, I mean, some guys, you know, you might be down in the woods all the time where you got sticks and stumps and things, and that would be a good characteristic to have, the puncture resistance. But I would prefer the R3 tires because, first of all, I never had any issues with punctures on those, and the construction is a little bit more matched to the weight of a machine like this. So I guess bottom line is what I'm trying to say is these tires look cool, but in my experience, they don't perform as well. They tend to slip and slide a lot. I find that I have to use the differential locker quite a bit, or else keep it in four-wheel drive all the time, which is what I've kind of resorted to doing, is just keeping this tractor in four-wheel drive all the time. If I try to back up a hill, these things will spin out immediately. They just don't provide as good of traction as the R3 tires, and the stiffness and construction of them will just beat you to death. You really need to run these at the lowest PSI you can. So it's unfortunate that all of the compact tractors that are for sale out there have these R4 tires on them, in my opinion. I really would like to see dealerships order tractors, if they can, with some different styles of tires on them. It would be really nice if they would start mixing and matching and have some in stock that have R3s on them. You know, and the other thing that I haven't mentioned yet is the new R14s, which kind of blend a little bit of the R3 and a little bit of the R4. I don't have experience with those, so I don't really want to, say a lot about them. Wouldn't be fair. From what I've seen of them, they are a little bit better at different types of terrain than this tire. They're a little bit pricey, but the people that run those R14s seem to really love them. So that may be a good option as well, but I still think the R3 is the way to go. And if I ever have to replace these in the future, I'm definitely going to go back to the R3 tires. The issue is these are 43 inches, and the tractors that have the R3s on them, if you can find one, they're like finding a needle in a haystack, but if you find one, they have 41-inch tires on them. Not a big deal, but it's a little bit shorter of a tire. Not quite as big as this. But yeah, I mean, that's just kind of what I've experienced is, I really like those turf tires. I know a lot of people give them a bad rep, but I think that they're really great for the same reason that an all-terrain tire is so great on a truck. It's good at everything. Might not be the perfect tire for any one scenario, but it's really good for everything. I mean, there's nothing you can throw at an R3 that it's not going to do well at. Whereas these are kind of a one-trick pony. I mean, they're good for puncture resistance, but other than that, I'm not a big fan of them. And believe it or not, the times that I've had these in the mud, they do still kind of pack up a little bit, especially in the center. So, I don't know, there you have it. Got R4s on here, and I guess because tires are so expensive, I'm gonna keep running them as long as I can, but when they eventually wear out or I have an issue one day, I'm gonna go back to the R3 turfs. If you're gonna use your tractor for a lot of different things like I do, around the property and what have you, and if you have an option to do so, I would strongly suggest trying to find the R3 turf tires if you can. I think that you would really like those a lot better as an all-around tire. They give you a little bit more comfort in the operator station because you're not bouncing around as much, and they just provide really nice traction, and they wear better too. I've already noticed that on the fronts, these R4s are really wearing hard right here on the outside where this block is so aggressive. The front ones here, let me show you. They're kind of, get the camera moved around here, see how they're really wearing down already? Because when you steer, you've got this outside aggressive part of the tread block that the tractor's riding on. And so, I mean, this tractor's got 100 hours on it and they're already wearing pretty aggressively out there. So, it's just, like I said, just my opinion on the situation. I know that a lot of people have different uses for their tractors, but I really tend to like the R3 tires. So there you go. That's gonna pretty much be the end of that topic. If I ever get an opportunity to run those R14s, I might test those out for a while and give you some thoughts on those. But for now, I just wanted to kind of mention comparison between these R4s and the R3 turfs that I had before. And surprising results, I guess, for some people, but I just honestly tend to prefer the turf tires. So, all right, guys, thanks for watching as always, and we'll see you later.